Look, I know it's still early in the season, but at the same time, we're now 9 games in, which is pretty much a ninth of the way through the season, so it's not an insignificant sample size. And to this point, honestly, I have about as much idea of who this team is and what they could do this year as I did at the beginning of the season. Sometimes it's almost like we're watching two completely different teams play out there. There's the one that honestly I feel like has a decent chance of making the playoffs, especially in this mess of a Pacific division that we saw in LA, Colorado, and against the Sabres. And then there's the disorganized, haphazard chaos version of the Kraken, and I don't mean chaos in a good way like the Mariners. I mean much more in like what we saw early on last season when it was a brand new expansion team with a bunch of guys that had hardly ever played together. Well, had never played together except for a few preseason games. It's a team that, sure, through that chaos, occasionally finds scoring chances here and there, but rarely is able to actually capitalize on those in the way that you would expect or hope, often giving up wide open shooting opportunities near the goal and opting for questionable passing lanes that either aren't there or just missing the pass entirely. Meanwhile, in turn, giving up very good scoring chances, maybe even better scoring chances back the other way, that always seem to find their way into the back of the Kraken net. As for what the difference is between these two very different versions of the Kraken, if I had to put one word to it, it would probably be focus. If I had to put two words to it, it would probably be penalty kill to this point in the season. But I think focus really encapsulates it a little bit better. And we'll get to the penalty kill as this game goes along. And what's even more frustrating is that to this point in the season, we can't even get the same Kraken team to show up more than one game in a row. Which, that being said, I guess it's a good thing that we don't get the bad chaos version of the Kraken to show up more than one game in a row. But we've seen that good team now every other game, and they just don't show up for the next game. Which is especially interesting in this one, considering that literally the exact same team was out on the ice, even down to the lines that we saw in the Buffalo game. Which, yes, does also mean that for the second game in a row, Shane Wright, along with Ryan Donato, but more notably Shane Wright, was again a scratch. And that's something, the whole Shane Wright conversation, that we're probably just going to have to save for a separate video unless something drastic changes against Pittsburgh. But I wouldn't expect that at this point. Though, with that having been said, it's hard to blame Hackstall and the Kraken for sticking with the same lineup in this one after that Buffalo game, especially considering the two guys you'd most likely scratch to get Wright or Donato back into the lineup were two of the best players in that game against Buffalo in Sprong and Geeky. And the other one in Kuhlman also was pretty decent against Buffalo and was one of the better players in this game against Vancouver. Oh, and yes, by the way, what's cracking, everybody, and welcome to Kraken R&R, where if you haven't figured it out by now yet by the tone of the video or the graphic that I probably already have up over here somewhere, the Seattle Kraken lose in regulation to the Vancouver Canucks 5-4, handing the Canucks their first win of the season. And in so doing, not so fun fact, become for the second year in a row, the only 2 years of Seattle's existence, the team to hand the last team in the NHL to get their first win of the season their first win, as the Kraken gave Arizona their first win of the season after going 11 winless last year, and now this year hand Vancouver their first win of the season after going 7 winless. Which I guess, cup half full, that fact does also mean that the Kraken themselves haven't been that team that's the last to get a win in any given season, but still not where you want to be. Now, I will say with this game, for those hoping that this whole Vancouver-Seattle thing will turn into a rivalry over time because of the close geographic proximity of the two cities and being in the same division, although it really didn't feel like a rivalry at all last season, in fact, sometimes kind of felt like a little bit of the opposite, if that's possible, partially because of how the season went for both of the teams, and also that whole Kraken fan saving the life of a Vancouver Canucks equipment guy, which was a very great story, and I'm glad that happened, but it didn't really help the whole rivalry thing. This game, however, did kind of help the rivalry, as before this game can really even get started, I mean, technically speaking, puck had dropped, but within the first couple of minutes, Larson lays a big hit on Pearson along the boards, which Pearson doesn't take kindly to, and this has been a frustrating season for the Canucks so far, so he immediately goes after Larson, and the two of them duke it out in front of the net. Larson, who got the better of the hit, also gets the better of this fight, but neither of them go to the ice, and they kind of give a, good fight little tap on the side as they both head to the box. Then not too long after that, another fight ends up taking place. This time it's a much less cordial one, if that makes any sense for a fight. But either way, it's a pretty heated one between Carson Soucy and JT Miller. Hard to say really who got the better of this one, as It is Susie who ends up taking Miller to the ice, but they both got some blows in. And just like that, we have 4 guys in the box already. And then again, not seconds later, but we have another fight starting to brew as Horvat is going after Vince Dunn. Smartly though, Dunn turns Horvat down for what would have been a 3rd fight here in the first couple minutes of the game, and also would have put a 3rd Kraken defenseman in the box for at least 5 minutes. So yeah, although I think Dunn may have taken this otherwise, he's pretty smart to turn it down, as it honestly almost seemed like the Canucks' plan coming into this game was to get some frustration out and try to just goad all of the Kraken defensemen into the penalty box and take advantage of that. Fortunately, Dunn doesn't quite let that work, but still, I mean, you'll see. Finally getting into the game itself, Seattle, who actually in the last couple of games has gotten off to some hot starts, even in that Chicago game, which of course they ended up losing thanks to a couple of lapses in focus, which we'd already mentioned. But again, they got off to hot starts in both of those. However, in this one, it's back to some old tricks as Vancouver ends up getting on the board first, about 5 minutes into the game. But I will say, to be fair to all the Kraken players involved in at least this one anyway, it is just kind of a bad bounce that ends up in the back of the net, as Kuzmenko just kind of throws a puck towards the net that goes well wide of it, but it does end up hitting Schultz on the far side of the net, who just can't quite get out of the way in time. And unfortunately, the puck bounces off of him, gets a little bit of distance from him, and then just kind of dies in front of the net, where Ilya Mikheyev is able to get to it first and chip it over Jones, who's trying to get back, but just isn't quite able to get back in time. And Vancouver's up 1-0. The good news, though, is that not only do the Kraken play like the better team for most of the rest of the first period 5-on-5, but they're also going to get a power play here shortly after this first goal goes in. And this is an improved Kraken power play that's been pretty good to this point in the season, and they're going up against the worst penalty kill in the entire NHL. However, the power play doesn't really go much of anywhere, and although, again, the Kraken did look like the better team, that really doesn't go much of anywhere for them either until we get into the last couple of minutes. And with about a minute and a half left, it does look like Vancouver's going to take that 1-0 lead into the first intermission. Now, of course, at this point, it is also worth mentioning that with this being the 2022-23 Vancouver Canucks, even if they are able to get into this first intermission with the 1-0 lead, having a lead has not been kind to the Canucks so far, so even if the Kraken are behind, well, the Canucks can't blow a lead if they don't have one. But that isn't going to be a problem because with a minute and a half left, the Kraken get a face-off in the offensive zone, and they're able to win it, which, unfortunately, once again, this is a bit of a problem for the Kraken, isn't something that they really did all that frequently this game. But again, they do at least win this one out to Tanev, who gets the puck up to the blue line for Schultz. Schultz passes it along the blue line to the other side for Alexiak, who takes a one-timer at the net, but the save is made. No, it leaks through and it's in! It's a goal for the Kraken, Alexiak's second of the season, that Demko would certainly want back, not only because it ties up the game late in the period, but also because he saw this one coming all the way from pretty far out. Still, it, even though he gets a piece of it, gets through either under his glove arm or under his pad on that side, and just squeaks over the line to get the Kraken on the board and tie this game at 1. Then, about a minute later, with just a few seconds left in the period, the Kraken, and Yanni Gordon in particular this time, is able to win a faceoff in the offensive zone. However, the puck still ends up all the way out of the offensive end, and in fact, all the way back into the boards behind the Kraken net. Still, they're able to transition it up the ice, and it's eventually Dunn who throws a pass up to Gord, who just chips it into the offensive end. But what nobody else seemed to see, especially not JT Miller, because he just led him right past him on the backside, is that Jared McCann snuck across the blue line there, picks up that pass and gets a free shot off on Demko, but again, the save is made. Or it's not, it leaks through and it's in again! I guess, to be fair to Demko, he does actually come up with the save on the original McCann shot as it goes off of his glove arm. But because he wasn't able to catch it cleanly in the glove, it bounces off that glove arm and maybe off of a couple of other things, eventually sneaking over his pad on the far side, and then just rolling into the net across the line before anybody else can get to it, or Demko has any idea where it went, and giving the Kraken a 2-1 lead, just again about a minute after they were down by 1 going into the period. And for McCann, it's his 5th of the season, which leads the Kraken like he led the team last year, and also the 4th game in a row now that he's put one in the net, which is a new career high streak for him. Unfortunately, as I alluded to in the beginning of this video, the Kraken team that left to the locker room at the end of the first does not seem to be the same team that came out of the locker room to start the second. As for the vast majority of this second period, The Kraken play extremely sloppy hockey. I mean, to be fair, both teams played pretty sloppily in this second period and for a good portion of the third as well. But the Kraken were the team in the first period that had control, and they just kind of give it up here in the second, which gets off to about the start that you would expect at the beginning of the period, as the Kraken give up a power play to the Canucks. And well, as we talked about, the Canucks had the worst penalty kill in the entire NHL coming into this game. The Kraken weren't that far behind them and only do some catching up here, as although they do actually kill off most of this power play pretty decently. As we get into the final seconds of it, a puck going through the crease ends up getting caught in Kuhlman's skates. He can't find it at his feet. It gets out to Mikheyev, and Mikheyev finds the back of the net again. This is one that Jones would also probably like to have back himself, as he definitely had time to make this save. But for Mikheyev, it's his second goal of the game, and it ties the game at 2. From there, again, for most of the rest of the second period, both teams pretty much just trade trying to give each other goals, and then eventually the Canucks get another power play. And wouldn't you know it, once again, after some decent killing, the Kraken are unable to clear the zone, and once again the puck finds the back of the net. This time it's a nice pass from Miller that ends up going off of a stick on the far side of the net and into the Kraken net to give the Canucks back the lead, now 3-2. Now, it is frustrating how we got here, with the Canucks retaking the lead off of 2 power play goals in the period, which also, as it turns out, puts the Kraken penalty kill now second worst in the league, second only to these Canucks. But it is also at this point that the Canucks once again kindly demonstrate to the Kraken just how it is that their season has ended up where it is at 7.5-ish games into the season at this point, as they end up going full lack of focus, bad version of the Kraken, and give up a quick response goal. The Kraken, I'm pretty sure they end up winning the faceoff. Either way, they get the puck pretty quickly after the faceoff, and it's Eberle transitioning the puck through the neutral zone up to Schwartz, and Schwartz does a quick, as he gets pinched by Shin along the boards, 180, or honestly like almost 360, twirling pass, throwing the puck out into the open ice in the offensive end, where there's nobody there but Matty Beniers, who's managed to beat the rest of the Canucks defense. He's on a free breakaway, and he buries the shot just 17 seconds after the Canucks took the lead on the power play. Beniers, with his 4th of the season, ties the game at 3. Again, I cannot describe enough or show with screenshots enough just how nice of a pass this was from Schwartz to release Beniers on this breakaway. Actually, it turns out it's just about the exact same pass that Beniers got to Schwartz against Buffalo, though that time Buffalo, or I guess Comrie in net for Buffalo, was able to make the save on Schwartz. This time, though, with the roles flipped, Beniers is able to bury it, again, to tie up the game. And then, to make matters even better for the Kraken, they're going to get another power play shortly after. However, again, this doesn't really go much of anywhere, and we end up getting to the end of the second period with the score still tied at 3. And then, to start the third period, once again, the team that seemed like they were starting to build some momentum there at the end of the second after playing sloppily throughout the entire thing up to that point, come out pretty much dead here in the third and give up another quick goal. 3 periods, 3 goals within the first 5 minutes. This time, much like the first period, it was kind of just some bad bouncing, as a shot from Shen, which actually wasn't even a shot, he was just throwing it into the slot to see what would happen, but his yeeting of the puck into the slot ends up getting batted out of the air towards the ice by Soucy, which, you know, defensively not a terrible play, but unfortunately, Soucy hitting the puck out of the air, spiking it on the ice, with it being rubber and all, it just bounces right back up off of the ice, where Pettersson, with some very nice hand-eye coordination, is able to bat it into the net past Jones without really much of anything he can do. And just like that, the Canucks have the lead again. It's okay though, not long after this, the Kraken would get their 3rd power play of the game, and against a terrible penalty kill team like the Canucks, and again, a power play that's been pretty good for the Kraken to this point in the season, you gotta imagine that they have a pretty good chance of evening things up right back here. But no, they don't. The power play again just, I mean, this time they did get some chances, but again, really doesn't do much of anything. Well, I mean, at least this time they did get some shots off. Unfortunately, all of those shots went wide of the net. None of them actually ended up even having to get saved. So yeah, it turns into nothing. And then as we get into the back half of the third, this is where the Kraken do start to really take control of the game for the first time in a consistent manner since the back half of the first period. Unfortunately, they just can't get one to go, as Demko is finally into this game and making some pretty nice saves. Mercifully though, in the final minutes of the game, the Kraken are finally able to get one to go into the net, as a lob shot from the back corner behind the Vancouver net goes over the net to the far side, where another very nice hand-eye coordination play, this time from Andrei Burakovsky, bats the puck out of the air, down into the net, and the Kraken have tied the game at 4. Or at least that's what everyone thought for a few seconds, until we realized that the official staring at the net immediately emphatically was waving it off. It turns out it's a high stick that Burakovsky hits the puck into the net with, which is now the second time this season that a Kraken goal has been taken, well, I guess not really taken off the board, but has been waved off due to a high stick. Unfortunately, with this one for Burakovsky, much like the one that took a goal off the board for Beniers earlier on in the season, it was technically called right by the rule. It was a high stick and correctly waved off, as much as I hate to say it. And unlike the one with Beniers earlier on in the season, where that one felt like it was kind of against the spirit of the rule, as he was way out in front of the net and not near anybody that he could possibly have hit with his stick, with it being a rule that is really there to protect goaltenders, because you don't want sticks just getting swung around near their head as they're crouched or on their knees in front of the net. With this one, for Burakovsky, it is pretty much exactly why that rule is there. Sure, it's a great hand-eye coordination play by Burakovsky to hit the puck in, and no, he wasn't anywhere near actually hitting Demko with his stick. But if you allow this kind of play, it's only a matter of time before goaltenders start taking sticks to the face. And I guess, sure, you could just institute some kind of rule like what the NFL has with quarterbacks, where if you even so much as blow wind on the mask of a goaltender with your stick, then you get a penalty. But that kind of just opens up a whole can of worms that I don't think we really want to open. Anyway, the point is, this goal doesn't end up counting as cool as it was. And we get into the final couple of minutes where eventually Jones gets pulled from the net. The Kraken go to the 6-on-5, and not too far into it, a backhanded lob pass clearing the zone does end up rolling all the way into the Kraken net to make it a 5-3 game. So yeah, at this point it's pretty much over. Or is it over? After all, this season's Canucks are already famous for blowing multiple multi-goal leads, and sure, this time there's less than a minute left in the game, but right off the faceoff, the Canucks gift the Kraken a power play and a chance to go 6-on-4. And at 6-on-4, the Kraken, with time winding down and still 2 goals to make up, are forced into showing some urgency when shooting the puck on the power play here, which, to be honest, they had kind of gotten away from in earlier power plays this game, at times even looking like that slow, indecisive power play that we saw last season not have very much success. Here, though, they're firing pucks at the net, trying to get anything to go, and eventually a Burakovsky shot goes a little bit wide of the net, but Eberle is able to get his skate on it. It bounces over Demko and over the net to the other side, where Schwartz is able to catch it in midair, throw it to his feet, and bat it into the net to put the Kraken back on the board and get them to within 1. It's 5-4. And just like that, even though there's only 17 seconds left and they're still down a goal, because in part it's the Canucks, it almost feels like the Kraken have a chance to at least get this to overtime. And they do end up getting the puck pretty quick after the faceoff. Jones is able to get the bench, and they almost get another couple of shots off, but Burakovsky's next shot, well, one shot goes wide, it gets back to Burakovsky, and this second shot that could have potentially found the net to tie the game, in the final seconds, it's blocked in front by Miller, who was in some serious pain after blocking this shot, as he limped to the locker room after it's blocked, but it does ice the game for Vancouver, and again, the Kraken lose 5-4. And so in the end, again, it's a Kraken team that honestly outplayed the Canucks for most of the first period and at least half of the third period, but was just way too sloppy for pretty much the entire second and the first half of the third, and especially on the penalty kill, with, again, the second worst penalty kill in the league, and if it wasn't for the Canucks, would have been easily the worst penalty kill. So it's something that they're definitely going to have to figure out how to get cleaned up and figure out how to get rid of this sloppy, chaotic, disorganized version of the team that just shows up to ruin some of these games that otherwise they probably should win. But unfortunately, until they can figure out how to show focus throughout an entire game and, more importantly, string games like that together, this is just something that we're going to have to deal with and hope that it doesn't ruin too many games over the course of this season. As far as Kraken 3 stars in this game, again, there were players that definitely had good games here. McCann had a great game. I'll give him the first star. Again, 4 goals in 4 games for him and leading the team in that category at this point. Plus, he almost had another one as well. I guess I could have given the first star to Schwartz as he does get the goal there at the end and also had that beauty of a pass that set up the Beniers goal. But I'll give him the second star. I think McCann maybe played better throughout the rest of the game away from the puck and all that. Anyway, McCann first star, Schwartz second star. Third star's a little harder to decide, but I'm going to go with Matty Beniers. Not his best defensive game, but offensively, he was definitely around the puck and again was another guy that had some good chances, obviously scored on the breakaway, but also had one play that would have been probably the goal of the season for the Kraken if he had gotten it in, as he just kind of did everything himself from center ice, beating pretty much the entire Canucks lineup, or at least the 5 guys that were on the ice anyway, to get the puck to the net and force a save from Demko. Still, Beniers keeps getting on the scoreboard, and yeah, give him the third star. And I guess also come to think of it, although I think I will still stick with those 3 for the stars, at least as an honorable mention, Eberle has 2 assists and also a pretty good game in general in this one. Still, it's not good enough as a whole for the Kraken, and I would imagine we'd see some more changing in the lineup before the Pittsburgh game. Probably Shane Wright back, and I'd really like to see Donato back, especially since he'll probably put a puck in the net as he tends to do after getting scratched. So yeah, hopefully a little bit more consistent focus against Pittsburgh, as they're definitely going to need it against a good team like the Penguins. Anyway, we're going to call it on this one. Let me know what you thought of this game down in the comment section. Obviously, it had its highs, and it certainly had its lows, including how the game ends. Either way, until next time, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you liked or enjoyed this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate using them. As always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.